How's everyone doing today? I hope you're doing well. I want to apologize. I really haven't made much content in forever. And normally I blame it on work, and I've actually been working. I've been overseas on a job site in a country that I notoriously don't like working in. Um, and I've been here for about 4 weeks, and of those 4 weeks, about 2.5 of those weeks, I've been in isolation, very, very sick with COVID. One of the side effects of having burnt lungs is that it makes you very, very prone to lung infections, and it's very, very difficult to overcome infections. So I'm going to try to give you a little bit of content. However, I have to warn you, I may have to pause this while recording, primarily because I'm hacking up my lungs. Again, it's it's very easy for me to get sick, and when I get sick, I don't recover from it. It takes forever, which is one of the reasons why it's probably weird that I have a job as somebody that travels international. Excuse me, internationally. I do have to say, even before COVID, I always messed up in mass transit just because I was so prone to getting sick from people. Um, that and I find that when I'm already a big tall guy with facial scars and stuff, that's pretty intimidating to people. So if I just wear a mask, like a surgical mask kind of thing, I picked that up in Asia from the bird flu. I was over in Asia during bird flu, which is also pretty sketchy. So needless to say, my wife's really unhappy that I'm stuck overseas. She wants me home. Of course, I can't get on a plane until I clear COVID restrictions. I've already told my management that they're sending me back. I'm not in the mood to be in here anymore. But anywho, I haven't really talked at all about this craziness that happened in Baltimore. I would talk about Patrick, but Patrick really hasn't done anything but spurg out at people online. At least that's all that I've noticed. He's still Pat is so boring unless somebody's messing with him, and I can't be bothered to make a new Twitter account just to follow Pat, so I'm pretty much missing everything. So I did want to talk about the Francis Scott Key Bridge disaster fiasco. I wouldn't necessarily, well, yeah, you know what? I would call it a disaster. We're at the point where it's a disaster. So a little bit of history. I'm originally from Baltimore. So Baltimore is surrounded by Baltimore County. Baltimore is the largest city effectively in the state of Maryland. However, it's not the capital. What's it called? I can't even remember the capital of. You tell I'm really not feeling well. I know Annapolis. Good Lord, I couldn't remember Annapolis. So here's Annapolis. Annapolis is the academy, or is the capital. It's also where the Naval Academy is. So Baltimore um, is a Rust Belt city. It's just like Detroit and Canton, Ohio, and so on. They used to make everything. They used to have airline. They used to make airplanes, refrigerators, cars used to be made there, and there used to be the largest integrated steel mill. It used to be Sparrows Point. This used to be a massive steel mill complex. And when I say integrated steel mill, what I mean is it made everything under the planet. I would say last time I looked it up, I want to say it was 5 generations of my family worked here. Let's see, I know for a fact my great grandfather worked there. My grandfather worked there until the war, I mean World War II broke out. And then it was like 7 of my uncles, both of my aunts, because in the 60s, women started running the tin line. I don't even know how many cousins and shit. This was the single largest employer. And I want to say it was around the 90s. No, it was around the 2000s that Sparrows, Bethlehem Steel collapsed. And with it, they took Sparrows Point. And it was pretty devastating for the state of Maryland because this was the single largest employer, especially if you included all the different other companies around associated with running the steel mill. And the steel mill complex was basically replaced with fulfillment centers, which are just massive great warehouses and stuff. They're not very good paying jobs whatsoever. But Sparrows Point, well, let's be real, Sparrows Point was an absolute death trap to work at. But it was also one of the only places in Maryland where you could have a or in state in around Baltimore where you could have like a high school diploma and you would get a really good middle class job. Um, a lot of people in Maryland blame the unions for Sparrows Point's collapsing. No, it's just Bethlehem Steel. Bethlehem Steel was a very, very notoriously bad running company. Um, I could go off on a very long time about how bad Sparrows Point was. I'm sorry, Bethlehem Steel was. So all these good jobs, like the steel mill, the shipyard, everything's basically collapsed and replaced with shitty jobs. So Maryland kind of went in hard on trying to, they need to have an employment center. They need to have something bringing in jobs. So they really invested heavily into the port system. They widened the Patapsco, or they didn't widen the Patapsco, but they did definitely deepen the Patapsco. They put in large key cranes. Key cranes are the ones that pick up the containers and then they put them on the ground. And then what'll happen is you'll have straddle carriers, or no, in this case they don't have straddle carriers. They're just using trucks. They'll have trucks that will bring them over into the yard, and in the yard they have the stacking cranes that'll arrange things in order and stuff. This is a pretty small facility, and usually these are much more. I'm sorry, excuse me, much more automated. Over here, this looks like this is. I believe this is the major. This terminal here is for loading and unloading vehicles. This is one of the major ports on the East Coast for bringing in cars and stuff. And then, of course, they have other local. They have, I want to say, around, yeah, the cruise terminal. This is for the cruise ships and so on. So this has basically become the lifeblood because unless you have the boats coming into here, all of these jobs here are pointless. They're pointless. There's no reason to have distribution centers here, and these distribution centers are basically to load up trucks. And I think they also have, yeah, they have rail lines. It's also to load up the rail lines as well, to get those your Amazon crap from overseas shipped to where you want it to be. So you can naturally imagine that getting in and out of this waterway is pretty freaking important. Now, to get across Baltimore, you can either drive through Baltimore, which is a bit of a nightmare. It's not really that great of a drivable city. Which, by the way, Baltimore Cemetery. I grew up right around here. I grew up right around where, yeah, North Port Street. I grew up on North Port Street. Let's see how it looks on Gay Street, North Port Street. See, it's not so bad. It's really not so bad, except where you run into this, where you have the absentee land property owners that don't maintain their shit, and it can get real sketch really, really quickly. Like Gay Street tends to be a pretty rough, pretty rough. So like the next block over, this is North Monty Street. North Monty Street was bad when I was growing up, and it looks like it hasn't really gotten any better. It's a real shame. I know a lot of people like to shit on the Baltimore. I'll put it this way: there's two kinds of people in Baltimore. There's those that are rich enough that the problems don't affect them, and then there's those that can't afford to get out. And again, for anyone who's like, "Oh yeah, Baltimore's just a shithole, and it'll never happen to my community, my town," lose 40% of your employment overnight. See what happens. Study after study has shown that the guys that are slinging dope on the corner make less than what you'd make working fast food. And like the guys that are slinging dope, they would gladly work at McDonald's. It's better pay, it's better job security, it's better personal safety. But unfortunately, there's just not enough fast food joints in the city of Baltimore, kind of thing. The other big thing is there's a lot of jobs still in Baltimore, but they're filled in by people that live outside of the city. We have a lot of hyper commuters and so on. I don't know. I don't know how to fix it. I'll just put it that way. I don't know how to fix it. But for anyone that says like it's just because there's black people, or it's just because the crime, or it's just because the drugs, and like it's a multifaceted issue that it's not easy to solve because if it was easy to solve, it would have been solved a long ass fucking time ago. And again, if you think it could never happen in your neck of the woods, it absolutely could. Because this isn't a rural or I'm sorry, an urban problem. I've been to rural areas that have the same exact problem. I live in Appalachia, and it's like whenever one of our coal mines shut down, that local area turns into a no-go zone. Yeah, you might only have like 4 or 5 murders a year related to drugs, but when your town is only like 100 people, that gives you a per capita rate that's like historically bad. So anyway, I'm getting distracted. I apologize. So to get around Baltimore, there's kind of 4 ways to do it. You could take 95, which is Fort McHenry Tunnel, which is 4 bores, and I want to say that they're 4 lanes apiece. I can't remember exactly. So there's two north. Oh, I'm sorry, they're 2 lanes apiece. That's right. So they're 4 bores, 2 lanes apiece, and so 2 are going northbound, 2 of them are going southbound. And I realize it's going east to west, but for the most part, it's going north south. And then you have the old tunnel, which is 895, which is 2 bores that are 2 lanes apiece. And of course, these are tolls to go across. And then around the city, you have 695, which is kind of the way to go around it the other way. And 695 doesn't have a toll. Now, 695 is like really, really wide, really, really absurdly wide at points. And so it's the Beltway because it wraps around the city. Well, now it's no longer a Beltway. Now it's what would I call it? It's not a Beltway. It's a broken loop. God, Lee, you could tell I'm fucking sick. I had something in my head I was going to say, not necessarily witty, but okay, my brain's not working. And that is because the Francis Scott Key Bridge is gone. Um, there's a couple things I want to mention from my perspective as somebody that works in ports and so on. I think I've shown in the previous video, like videos of ship-to-shore cranes getting knocked over. A lot of people are like, well, why didn't the boat travel with tugboats? A tugboat cannot stop a fully loaded Super Panamax container. It can't. It absolutely can't. There's nothing it can do. The tugboat is there to effectively give you false hope. A tugboat on these ships, all the tugboat can do is when that ship is stationary against the pier, it can help push it into the pier a little bit. And a lot of times I've even been in situations before where the boat is on the pier. We've got tugboats that are trying to hold the boat in place. And even then we have to use the container ship's engines to keep the boat in place. These ships are just simply too large and the container ships are freaking too small. Now, is there anything they could have done to prevent this incident? There's a couple of things, and this is a wide spectrum failure. First of all, almost immediately when the Francis Scott Key Bridge got built, one of the big controversies was the fact that there are no dolphins. There's no defensive structures around these 2 support beams. So, for example, what I mean by dolphins is you could refer to something like this as a dolphin. This is a power line. Now, granted, this is not going to stop a ship-to-shore crane from taking out this power line. It's not. But this is kind of what I mean by a dolphin, where you have a structure here that's sort of designed to try to protect the overall structure. In reality, the dolphins for something like this would be much further up the channel and in stages. It's going to be like what it's there is it's a destructive, it's a destructive piece of defense that is not trying to stop the ship, but at the very least redirect the energy somewhat. So like when you're on the highway, right, and you're going up to a construction zone and they have all those water barrels that are filled with sand and water. They're not there to stop your freaking car. They're just not. They're not going to be able to do that. But what they are there to do is to try to redirect the energy of your car, send your car in a different direction than what you're trying to, in the direction you're going to. And that's sort of what these structures are supposed to be for. And they've known about this for fucking years. They've known about this for years, that this waterway was at major risk. So anyone that tries to say like, oh, we didn't know about that is bullshit. I know for the fact that when they were doing the expansion here, the port expansion here, this was one of the major things that was brought up to our governor at the time, Governor Hogan, was that this bridge was at major, major, major fucking risk, and that the state of Maryland needed to invest, or at the very least apply for federal improvements. And of course, the argument they always make was, well, we were meeting like the bare minimum kind of shit. It's really fucking irritating. This is Katrina all over again. This is fucking Katrina all over again. So this could have been prevented. The other thing that really, really fucking pisses me off, and this should piss off a lot of people, the guys, all the people that died on this bridge, they were able to successfully shut this bridge down. If you don't believe me, and you don't know the traffic on 695, even at 1 o'clock in the morning, that it's not necessarily stop and go traffic, but there's a lot of cars on 695 all the time. This is a major U.S. city, and this is the beltway around the city. It's packed. It's usually got a lot of heavy traffic. The state police were able to shut down that bridge successfully. The problem is they couldn't send a cop out there. They didn't have a cop there they didn't have enough cops to be able to shut down the bridge and also get somebody out there to warn the guys on the bridge. Now you're probably wondering, why didn't these guys on the bridge have a fucking radio? Well, apparently none of them spoke English. And apparently the company that had a contract with the state of Maryland, knew that this company was employing illegals and shit, and didn't bother with having any kind of protocol whatsoever. Like it should have been like these guys understood, hey, if you hear like two horn blasts, get the fuck off the bridge. Or if you hear this message on the radio, get the fuck off the bridge. They didn't have any of this set up ahead of time, which is absolutely fucking insane. Absolutely fucking insane. To be having guys working at any kind of height like this and not have any kind of safety protocols for when you stay on the bridge and when you get off the fucking bridge. So these guys were just sitting in their truck eating lunch, and they had no way of contacting these guys. It's absolutely batshit crazy, absolutely insane. And this is what happens when you allow states, governments to take a blind eye and just hire contractors and shit to just do whatever the fuck. And I mean, they've done platitudes where they're like, oh, we're going to set up like a scholarship to the children of these men who like lost their life. That's a load of crap. That's a load of, what's going to end up happening is they're going to very discreetly wait for everybody to stop giving a shit. And they're not going to give out any kind of, what are they going to do? They're going to track down the kids in Guatemala or whatever. It's horse shit. So anyway, I haven't really been following what the status is. I believe they were able to get at least a partial channel going through. This is super bad, like really, really, really fucking bad for the state of Maryland. It's really fucking bad. Because with this bridge down, you've got ships trapped in here, you got ships that can't come in here. This basically kills everything around here. There's no point in this existing if you can't get cargo into this point here. Now, my understanding is that the state of Virginia is helping out the state of Maryland, by which they're bringing in the containers here, put them on rail cars, bringing them into here, and trucking them over and putting them onto rail carts, and so on and so on and so on. They're basically, to get the cargo out, the state of Maryland's put them on rail cars and then trying to get them down to here so that they can then ship them out. And then all the importing is going into the Virginia ports. Virginia's making off like a bandit like this. But that still doesn't help all the fucking jobs related to this port, where you're stuck in hold mode until they get the Francis Scott Key Bridge cleared. It's a fucking wreck. It's a train wreck. This was completely preventable. This was completely predictable. They absolutely should have had dolphins in place to protect us. Now, I will say this. I've seen a lot of rumors by people thinking, or suggesting that this was sabotage and so on. The ship, when they're traveling through contested waterways like this, they're under operation of harbor pilots. In this case, it was 2 harbor pilots. The fact that the bridge was cleared in time, that you didn't have like 150 people killed, the harbor pilots took their job very seriously and they saved a shitload of lives. Now their jobs are probably over. They're still probably facing like civil and criminal investigations and so on. But I guarantee you, if this was a thing of sabotage, they would have done it so that like no warning came out whatsoever, and that's when it was going to be way more devastating. They also would have done it in rush hour. It's fucking irritating because this is like a prime example of our aging, out of spec um, infrastructure that we just don't fucking ever fix. So anyway, I'm exhausted. I'm gonna stop. Again, sorry for the lack of content of late. I've just been stuck in the Middle East, fucking miserable, and I hate it here. I hate coming here to work every fucking time I come here to work. This whole region here is just, yeah, pain in the ass to work. And it sounds like Israel is going to start attacking every country around it, because why the fuck not? That's something rogue nations do all the time, I guess. Anyway, I hope you all take care of each other. Ciao.